Before becoming Thanos, you lived with wolves.
Yeah.
You have said that you would wake up with bite marks on your face.
Holes, not bite marks. I'd be like, look, there's blood. My dad was like, I'm gonna shoot the wolf. And my mom said, if you shoot the wolf, I'm gonna shoot you. Everybody feared my mother, where she would walk in the cage of any animal and they would cower.
You had no safety whatsoever. Your father's off doing his thing. You're alone with this woman who is behaving in an insane manner.
But Josh became just like her.
I am my mother's child. I am a Tasmanian devil. I will do this my way.
There is so much pain in that human being.
Josh is the best villain of all time.
It's my 7th time. Thanos is a very complex character. There was a wolf that had been let out of the cage and let run in the garden. There was fencing that was crappy. My brother didn't know it. And at 6 years old, he got up on the edge of that fence and walked along the fence, and the wolf jumped up and grabbed his leg and pulled him down. And I was planting flowers with this ex-con named Norman that was like a ranch hand. And we looked, we heard the screaming. Norman jumped the fence and I went in. Norman kicked that wolf away from my brother and pulled him in. And then my dad came home almost at the same time. Went in and confronted my mom. My dad wanted to shoot the wolf. My mom said, I'll kill you if you shoot the wolf. And meant it. He had 60 stitches in his leg.
In the animal state.
Of course. Animal was the priority.
Josh's mother was a wildlife activist who was as unpredictable as the animals she cared for.
Your father's off doing his thing. He's afraid of your mother. You're alone with this woman who is behaving in an insane manner.
My mom had a loaded 9mm at her bedside table all the time. She'd say anything, do anything, didn't matter to her.
But despite being afraid of her, all Josh wanted was to get her attention.
Wolves are nothing compared to being invisible. And I always felt like I had to be somebody else. I was like I was born wrong. Something was broken.
So while his father fled, Josh became her best friend.
You were like 8 years old and you're her drinking pal.
Yeah.
You'll go to bars with her.
All the time.
Even though he was only 8, Josh would drive his mother wherever she wanted, making sure she got home safe.
Drove 50, 60,000 miles a year.
What the fuck?
This was normal. Being around cowboys, being around truck drivers. She wanted me to be the drunk cowboy, tough fighter, stand up to anybody man.
Josh was scared of the world he was being introduced to, so he resisted his mother's influence as best he could. But soon, he discovered one thing he couldn't resist.
Alcohol was the big thing. It was the one time that I didn't feel the stress that I felt as a 4-year-old or as a 6-year-old or as an 8-year-old. So when alcohol came in, I was like, I have a personality, I have a self. Somebody who is not invisible or somebody who's validated in some way. Oh my God, Josh is crazy. Well, if Josh is crazy, Josh exists.
As the years went on, Josh not only earned his mother's attention, but her admiration as well.
When I walked out of Juvie Hall for the first time and she was waiting for me in the lobby, there was a look that she gave me, a smile that she gave me, that told me that I was on the right road. Not the wrong road, the right road. The Cito Rats, as we called ourselves, were my misfit hive that I was at the epicenter of. A group of neglected kids banding together in anger and in need, with everything to say and nowhere to put it.
As time went on, Josh started going too far, even for his mother.
And I got kicked out of my house by my mom, and I stayed on my dad's couch.
Your dad, who, by the way, great actor, well-known guy.
James Brolin.
Well, I had no speech. I started to write one, and my wife came in and she said, "What for? You haven't got a chance in hell."
I thought maybe I should do this acting thing. I made up a total bullshit resume. I went through 350 auditions, and I was told the whole way, find a different profession, you're not good at this, you're too green. So I studied. I mean, I literally stayed in a bookstore 90% of the time. And one day I got The Goonies.
Haven't you ever heard of that guy? What's his name? The pirate guy. One-Eyed Willie.
Josh finally got his big break, a lead role in a major studio production produced by Steven Spielberg. But he couldn't get his mother out of his head.
I came to Steven at some point, and we were in one of the tunnels, and I said, hey, Steven, don't you think that the tunnels kind of represent my mother's womb? And like, what if we film me kind of climbing up the tunnel, but really I'm trying to cut that emotional umbilical cord of my mother, and I could have tears coming down my face. And I went into this whole thing, and I was getting all excited because he was nodding his head. And then I waited. And then he looked at me and he said, why don't you just act?
After the success of The Goonies, Josh started a family of his own. But soon, his mother sent his life crashing down.
She had a boyfriend, they had been out drinking, she had had breast cancer, and he started saying, you know, I don't know why I'm with you, with old lady, and look at you, and look at your breast, and all that. He was on his way out, and she pulled a .22 rifle on him. And she said, you're not going anywhere. And then he said, are you going to shoot me? Which I'm surprised she didn't shoot him. But he got out of there, and then she chased him, and that's when she hit a tree and died. Yeah.
Following the death of his mother, Josh spiraled.
I'm used to this. My wife's gonna be so happy. Through all the ups and downs of my personal life and all the people that I've come across, nobody compares to my mom. Nobody.
When he wasn't drinking, fighting, or in jail, Josh's career was going nowhere.
You have no money, and you're, asking anybody for parts.
It just went downhill, and I spent 22 years just trying to work. I'd do anything. I don't care what it was. And you're like the guy who's not going to hit. It's just you're not that guy.
But one day, Josh received a call that would change everything.
We didn't want the audience to think when we cut away from Tommy and from Javier, okay, well now we're going with the dull guy for a while.
Josh auditioned for a movie called No Country for Old Men.
We saw lots and lots of people, but it wasn't really until Josh came in and after you left the room, we knew we were going to cast in the movie.
It's got it. So. Yeah.
The movie didn't just become a hit. It completely revived Josh's career.
I got super close with him. Super close with Javier. Javier's wife. I mean, this is like some of my closest friends.
Even though Josh had considered himself invisible throughout his whole life, Penelope saw enormous potential in him.
He's amazing. He can do everything.
But Penelope soon saw the other side of Josh.
I was to receive an award from the New York Film Critics Circle for my stint in the film Milk. I had been given the opportunity to play with the big boys, but inside I was as scared as I'd always been. So I played an angle only my mother could fully appreciate. Be a fucking warrior, the wine whispered to me. I pulled out the paper folded twice from my inside jacket pocket and reread the speech I was about to give. I handed my speech to my worried-looking publicist and she read it through. When finished, she said, "You can't read that," which fed my intention more. I was going to be my mother's son, a cowboy, a drunk, my own man. Sean was asked to speak first. He sauntered up there with his usual confident gait and people looked on with respect. He very sweetly introduced me with a grinning quip. He goes harder than anyone I know, but suffers more the next day than most. I put my speech back in my jacket pocket and took one more swill of wine. Let's hear a little rant from the motor mouth himself. For Best Supporting Actor, Josh Brolin. I stood. The room acknowledged me with polite applause. I looked out among a sea of attendees. I recognized actors I had seen and admired through the years. This was a special night. As I reached into the pocket of the inside of my jacket for the third time that night, I felt my head swimming and my knees shaking. Should I read the speech? Fuck you, I am who I am. I walked up and unfolded the 2 letter-sized pieces of paper and let it fly. The wine started to speak about other actors, about certain writers. Words like motherfucker and piece of shit rolled off my tongue and onto a growing din of shock and disgust. There were images from my past trying to speak to me, images of cleaning the shit from the cages of timberwolves as a young boy. There I was on my perceived and so temporary pulpit with all eyes on me, pontificating on how I didn't give a fuck about the people who doubted me or tried to erase me. But I remember Penelope Cruz. She looked at me, and it was the saddest I had ever seen anybody look at me. Because she loved me, and I know she loved me. And she respected me, and she was just like, I don't understand why.
That night, after a lifetime of hard work, Josh set his career and reputation on fire.
She'll always be somewhere. She refuses to not be a presence. The perpetual apparition of Jane. There's an expectation that parents put on you, and it's having to live to a certain standard. Are you a kid that's going to be successful? Are you a kid that's going to be this? And everything that I manifested was against that. He's a Cito rat through and through. And you can't trust somebody like that. You can't rely on somebody like that. No more. I'm done. I went to this place and they said, go down to this grave, lay on the cemetery, and imagine your family and your closest friends and all the people that love you end up at this funeral. But they're pissed. They're pissed because how you manipulated them, that you died young and they loved you, and they're angry about it. So I did it. And then I went up and I told this counselor what I did, and she said, no, you didn't do it right. I said, I had this amazing epiphany. And she said, no, it wasn't right. Do it again. And I did it again. And I went back up and I told her, and she said, no, do it again. And then I remember I walked out into the driveway and I was like, this place. I know what they're doing. They're trying to break me. They're trying to this. This is what they all do. And I had that moment where I go, if I leave, I know what leaving is. But what if I stay? What if I jump out of the plane? I stayed, and I went down there, and I laid on that grave, and I imagined everybody. It was a visual that I will never forget. And then I experienced it, and I went back up to this counselor, and I didn't even get a word out. I went, and she goes, you got it. I love to drink, man. I loved it. It was like gasoline to me. I'm a decent human being, and then I have a drink, and I don't know what's going to happen. That doesn't happen anymore. It starts with me. It starts with my own relationship with myself and how I carry myself and how honest I am with myself. I've seen from that moment on the massive impact that that's had. Massive, massive. The biggest one being my older kids. I didn't know that my older kids didn't trust me. I just remember seeing in both kids' eyes something changed. Like, oh, we can rely on this dude. Given a few tools and directed in the right way, we can be the most trustworthy people imaginable.